Welcome, welcome, welcome as we look at the Word of God and summarizing these seven churches in the book of Revelation, starting mentioning in Revelation chapter 1, Revelation chapter 2, and Revelation chapter 3. And again, I'd just like to summarize what we've been talking about over the last few weeks, 6, 7, 8 weeks, and that is the seven churches in this region, as the Bible teaches us that we know it was written, the revelation was given to John the Apostle, also referred to as John the beloved disciple of Jesus, and how that he was exiled on the isle that's called Patmos here. As I'm pointing at it, the Isle of Patmos, which we see the vicinity, geographical vicinity of Ephesus down to Patmos down here. So the Bible tells us that he was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and God gave him the revelation to each one of the ministers or the angels of the churches in these various areas. So, the angel being the messenger to that congregation in that particular town, that city. So, as we reiterate here, we know that Ephesus was the hub, and we know that from Acts chapter 18, Acts chapter 19, and Acts chapter 20. Paul went on a missionary journey there, established a church in those particular chapters in the book of Acts, which is the historical book of the New Testament. And it was from here, Ephesus, that the elders, born again individuals became born again Christians, and who were dealing with sorcery, witchcraft, and all the various things. But God called them out of darkness into his glorious light, raised them up, called them to go out and to pioneer or plant the other churches in the other cities. All right. So that's where we are with the seven churches in Ephesus. And again, we're just going to summarize each of these areas and try to bring them all into focus, why Jesus, the glorified Christ, spoke to them and addressed them the way that he did. Again, as you go to the website, agapecommunitychristian.org, which is Agape Community Christian Church in the ministry of Agape Influential Ministry, you can see the chart that we put in there on the website under Bible studies, the seven churches of Revelation. And from each week, we posted on the website the video of the teaching. So please review those and go over that. All right. So again, these churches are located in the area known at that time as Asia Minor. And let me just give you a little summary historical background on this. The geography of Asia Minor this region greatly influenced the development of the settlements in this particular area. The region can be described as the point where the east meets west, linking the continent of Europe to and or with the Near East continent. Alrighty. So the cities that were established and developed in these local areas were vital to trade and commerce along this coastline, such as near the mouths of rivers that led out into the Mediterranean Sea and the Aegean Sea, which also connected to the Mediterranean Sea. So these cities were vital trade routes that used rivers and canals and went through mountain passes. So in speaking to the churches, a lot of different points are brought up concerning their geographical location as well as their significance in the development and establishment of this area, and the influence the gospel could have on a lot of travelers passing through there. So first, we want to take a look at what's referred to as the coastal cities, and that's here, Ephesus, as well as Smyrna. They were considered coastal cities. So Ephesus, it served as a primary trading center. Ephesus served as a primary trading center of all Asia Minor. Ephesus was a large port facility, or had a port facility that provided ample anchorage, a deep port that provided ample anchorage for ships carrying goods from Greece, Italy, as well as for those which took goods to Rome, and the wares that brought from overland, from the mountainous areas, from Palestine, from the other areas of Iraq and Iran, Persia at the time. So these were vital trade routes, and Ephesus was a deep port city, so they provided a lot of anchorage for a lot of the city, for a lot of the ships at that time. So Ephesus was considered one of the chief ports, chief cities, and chief ports of this Asia Minor area. And therefore, we can see why it was Paul's choice, God's choice, used Paul to establish Ephesus as the center of ministry and the base, the perfect base from which the gospel could spread throughout this the Roman world in this particular region, in specific to Revelation chapter 2 and 3. So Ephesus, all the travelers, the gospel can spread. And we read that the same thing in Acts chapter 2, how Jerusalem was that hub. So think about it in those terms. Ephesus was the hub or the base where the gospel could be carried forth to other regions. All right. So that's kind of the summary on Ephesus. And then as we dive into the book, the dissertation of Ephesus, you can understand why he was speaking to them the way he was. So now the next port city is Smyrna. Smyrna was surrounded. It was surrounded and it was well protected, had a well protected harbor. So surrounded and well protected harbor onto the Aegean Sea here. And it had an outlet which provided extensive trade into and out of Asia, right? And it passed through the city Smyrna, going up to Pergam or Pergamos. And history records that during the first century, Smyrna was one of the grandest cities of all Asia. So one of the grandest cities of all Asia. And not only that, but it also had temples dedicated to a wide range of Roman deities. And again, as we read Acts chapter 18, 19 especially, and 20, these areas were influenced a lot by the Greek mythology, the various gods, Zeus, Diana, and there was a lot of sorcery and things that influenced a lot of these cities and the people in these cities. So the culture, that culture was there. So the gospel was really bringing light to this particular region. So Smyrna, another coastal city that was surrounded and guarded, its ports was guarded and protected, going out to the Aegean Sea, one of the grandest cities in Asia at the time. So moving on from Ephesus and Smyrna, which were port cities, considered coastal cities or port cities, we move to Pergamum, or as the Bible refers to it, as Pergamus. This was the beginning of the cities of the interior, if you please, away from the coastal land. So Pergam or Pergamos. And again, they had a large altar of Zeus. They were influenced by the Greek mythology quite a bit, Zeus being the highest deity. And they had large altars, large altar areas that may be been what John was referring to, the seat of Satan. So again, a huge influence in Greek mythology worship. Altars were set up, and as John referred to it, You have entertained, these are my words, the seat of Satan or Satan's throne, Revelation chapter 2. This city was well known as a center, Pergamos or Pergam, was well known as a center of worship for the gods. Zeus, Demeter, Zephyrus, and all these different emperors of, of the Roman government. So that's kind of the summary on Pergamos. So then as we move inward, the Thyrotyra as well as Sardis, let's just talk about Sardis down here. Sardis is remembered as one of the first municipalities to establish mint coins, mint, silver, and gold coins. And it was also set in this very fertile valley, known as Hermus, the Hermus Valley, which sat on the Hermus River. So we see a lot of trade route through the waterways and this fertile land. And also, it is known, history records that they suffered an earthquake. There was an earthquake in 17 AD, somewhere around that time, and it struck a blow that they were never really able to recover from. So Sardis was very dependent on the other cities in this particular area. So then we also talk about Thyrotyra, and I'll ask you to refer to the YouTube. I try to give a description on Thyrotyra, as well as in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was also located on the Hermus River, inland from Sardis, and this city was set amidst many vineyards, right? So it was known for its production of wine, and again, just like the Philadelphia in our city, Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, is known as brotherly love. That name was given by one of the Roman governors named Philadelphus. So he was commemorating that brotherly love that he had with another one of his relatives and or friends. But it was known as the brotherly love. As you look at Revelation chapter 3, not a whole lot is talked about as far as criticism and consequences and correction. So therefore, John, God spoke through John to the angel of the church, and there was more commending as well as consolation. He who hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith. Also, there was an earthquake, and we notice in this region, this mountainous region, they were very subject to earthquakes, very much like the Western Hemisphere of California, the Western Hemisphere of the United States, California, and some of the Southwest states, very subjected to earthquakes, and earthquakes had great consequences. These cities experienced great consequences as a result of earthquakes. So Philadelphia, around 17 AD as well, experienced earthquakes as well, and tremors that lasted for 20 years after the initial earthquake. So they were damaged and they were debilitated within their city, within the city structures. All right. So then we move down to Laodicea over here. Laodicea, and it was in the center of the valley of this region here, pretty much in the center from the coast going out to the further Asia, Middle East, or Middle Asia, the Middle East as we refer to it. And Laodicea was known for its great wealth, and it allowed it to finance its own rebuilding after a destructive earthquake in 60 AD. So around the time when the Apostle Paul was in prison, 60 AD, 61, 62, around that time where he was in prison, earthquakes were happening for about a 50-year period in this region. Well, Laodicea was known to be a very wealthy city. It had its own banks, to the point where it refused the help of the Roman Senate to rebuild the city. So the city was known for clothes, for carpets, for black wool, glossy black wool. It was known for its medical, for ophthalmology, for its eye slap, all these different things that its large number of banks. So it was a wealthy city. And as we look at that, we can see why Jesus spoke to them the way that he did. And Laodicea was referred to as the lukewarm because of their geographical location. They didn't have access to a lot of the water resources. So a lot of their water was imported from over here in this area called a city called Colossus, which we read in Colossians, which had cool water in Colossus. But by the time it made its 5 or 6 mile journey into Laodicea, it became warm. So hence we get the reference lukewarm. You're neither cold nor hot. So cold water came from Colossus, and then up in this region, in the Hermus River region, the waters, they had more of the hot water, or hot water springs. And so Jesus made reference to them and says, you're neither warm you're neither cold nor hot. You are lukewarm. So that's the reference he's using to associate with their spiritual status. And a lot of the reference for Laodicea, as we read in Revelation chapter 3, refers to this self-reliance, self-sufficiency because of their wealth, because of the education provided there, the medical schools, because of the large number of banks, they became self-sufficient. So basically summarizing these areas in Asia Minor, these 7 churches, as the revelation was given to John the apostle by Jesus on the Isle of Patmos, right below me here. That's why he speaks to them that way, and we can learn a lot from them. These 7 churches are in the dispensation or the time period of grace, which we are in. And we look at our lives as we study these churches and the attitudes of these individuals in the churches and how God dealt with them by his grace. We reflect on our own lives as well. So that's kind of a summary of the whole 7 churches. Again, I encourage you to go to the website and look at each one of the teachings. And if you have any questions, shoot me a question. We'll address it. We'll arrange a time. We can talk, we can call, etc., etc. So we're here for you. So Lord bless you. And I pray that this was a blessing to you. All righty. God bless now.